our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Today was the second legislative day of the 2024 session, and lawmakers aren't wasting any time getting into serious issues. Both chambers convened today for what were mostly pro forma sessions because it's too early for legislation to be in a position for a House or Senate vote. But it did allow lawmakers to file bills and start them on the first step of the legislative process. We'll start upstairs in the Senate, where the Governmental Affairs Committee met to consider legislation on absentee voting. Senate Bill 1 from State Senator Garland Gudger of Coleman would increase the criminal penalties for so-called ballot harvesting, making it a felony instead of a misdemeanor. Democrats have vowed to fiercely oppose this bill, as they say it makes it harder for elderly and rural voters to cast absentee ballots. Gudger today substituted his original bill with a new version he says should alleviate the critics' concerns. That was not the case, however, as voting assistance groups and committee Democrats expressed frustration with the bill and the process, saying they haven't had enough time to read the new bill. But Gudger says he will ask Senate leadership to postpone putting the bill on the floor until the full Senate meets next week.
I requested, well, let's do not put this on the floor tomorrow. Let's go over the full weekend and wait because we don't come back in until Tuesday. So now we can, if we don't do it tomorrow, we have 5 days that we're able to allow everyone in the state of Alabama to review the bill.
I go to my great aunt Olivia Bazell's home to help her with her absentee ballot. If I help pre-fill it, or when we complete the application itself, if she says to me, which would not be uncommon for her to say, baby, can I give you $2 for your time or for your gas? Both of us, according to this piece of legislation, have committed a crime.
If an individual assists us, take, just as has been stated, maybe give someone something monetary for gas or maybe a meal. Individuals, not only disabled individuals, every individual runs the possibility of being criminalized just performing one of Alabama's hospitalities.
Grandmother or grandfather is going to pay their child $2 to go to put in a ballot application in the mailbox. Chances are the authorities are not going after that person, right? But if they collect 220 ballots, which has happened in the past that we have evidence of, and then return those, something's going on there. We're going after the bad actors at the State House that are changing elections because of ballot harvesting, not for the small people that need assistance.
Now on to the House, where another highly anticipated bill is being introduced. That's the gambling legislation House members have been developing for months. State Representatives Chris Blackshear, Andy Witt, and Sam Jones, along with State Senator Greg Albritton, today held a news conference to brief members of the press on their comprehensive gambling proposal. It would allow for a state lottery, expanded casino gambling, and sports betting, all in a constitutional amendment that, should it pass the legislature, would be put before state voters. But it is different than previous gambling proposals because it resets the legal playing field for all forms of gambling in the state. Blackshear described the proposal at length.
First is the constitutional amendment, the CA, which would create on the ballot. That bill is only 9 pages, very simple. But what it does is it takes everything that exists in Alabama today and completely implodes it. All local CAs, all 18 of them, will be abolished and removed. In fact, going forward in the legislation, there will never be another local CA relating to gaming that can ever come through the body for the local people in our 67 counties to vote on. We here within the state will take over control and regulating of gaming in Alabama. What would those gamings be? We will now set what is legal in Alabama. That will be casinos, a state lottery, sports betting, bingo, and traditional, it was raffles and traditional bingo, which is paper bingo. That will be the only 5 things that will be legal in the state of Alabama. Also, there will be a commission established, which will be the Gaming Commission. It will fall under the executive branch. Underneath that, they will hire an executive director of that branch. There will also be a lottery corporation, a 7-member board that will fall underneath that. The Gaming Commission overall will be a 9-person board appointed by various officials throughout the state, none of which have majority appointing ability to that board. Also, people of that board can be removed at any time for cause if they're doing something they shouldn't be doing on that board. It also gives the authority to the governor to enter a compact negotiations with PCI, the Porch Creek Indians, which have 3 locations and has been existing for years in the state. And I think the biggest and most important thing in here, it establishes the enforcement division of the Gaming Commission. There will be an enforcement wing where we will hire investigators, auditors, and everything else that we need to do, accountants. We will specifically focus on gaming in Alabama. It will not be a part of ALEA. It will not be a part of the AG's office. It will be underneath the Gaming Commission where we can focus solely on what's happening with gaming in Alabama.
That gambling proposal has not been filed yet, but members of the House say they have received draft copies to look over, as the bills could drop as soon as this week. We'll be following this issue closely as the session proceeds. Another big issue this session is school choice, and specifically education savings accounts. If you watched last night's State of the State address, you heard Governor Kay Ivey say that passing education savings accounts was her top legislative priority. She and top lawmakers have produced Senate Bill 61, which takes a measured, incremental approach to the program. The bill would allow parents to apply a $7,000 tax credit toward tuition at a private school or parochial school. It would also allow a $2,000 credit for homeschool parents. But there are restrictions. Any schools participating in the program would need to be accredited, or at least pending accreditation. The schools must participate in a legitimate testing program to track student achievement. And, at least for the first 2 years, only families making less than $90,000 a year would be eligible for the vouchers. The bill was discussed at length this morning at the Alabama Daily News Legislative Issues Breakfast. State Representative Danny Garrett, who is the House sponsor, said the bill should appeal to even people with mixed views on school choice. But State Representative Barbara Drummond disagreed, saying the legislature's focus should be on improving existing public schools.
Well, first thing I would like to say, I think that if you are for school choice, and there are a significant number of our constituents are for school choice, you should be happy with this bill, because I believe this bill is better than what most states have done. If you look at the data, it's better than what most states have done. If you are opposed to school choice, I think you should be happy with this bill, because this bill is a fiscally prudent, responsible way to build that school choice model. But when you look at what this will do, it will give opportunity for students who need an alternative. There are a lot of special needs students, for example, that do not have an adequate place to go. The local school does not have the wherewithal, the resources, the network to help them. The first 500 ESAs every year will be going to special needs students. That will give some parents the ability to do that. It's focused for the first couple of years on 300% poverty level, which is going to hit a sweet spot for people who really need some alternatives.
Those folks who are in those rural communities and poor communities who are looking for transportation and health care, and those communities that don't have a choice, they have one school and that is it. And so where will they go? How will they get there? And I am always worried. We talk about giving parents another choice. We have parents out there who are barely making a choice as to where they live and sleep and have a roof over their heads. What happens to those children who are left behind?
Also discussed at the legislative breakfast was the issue of improving workforce development. Power South CEO Gary Smith, who served as a co-chair on Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth's Workforce Commission, said education and workforce development must both be working for the state's economy to move ahead.
I think through education and think through workforce development, I come away with an upside-down triangle. On the bottom is education, and up one side is workforce development, and up the other side is economic development. And why I think about a triangle upside down is that education supports those other two legs. Without education, we don't get education right, those other two legs just are not up there. And then the leg across the top is the tie between workforce development and economic development.
Also at the State House today, prayers for the state's leaders as the session begins. ALCAP, the Alabama Citizens Action Program, gathered ministers on the front steps to offer prayers for lawmakers, executive branch leaders, and judges. ALCAP President Greg Davis said the group makes it a priority to pray for the state's leaders.
This is the third year in a row that ALCAP has sort of spearheaded this to pray for our executive branch, our judicial branch, and our legislative branch, all of them. But this is a good time of year to do it when the legislature just has got to town. They're just here beginning their business, and so it's a good time to pray for everyone. We all need prayer, you know, and we live in perilous times. And we know that we're in a spiritual battle as much as a physical battle. And so we know that prayer, we believe prayer works. We believe God hears our prayers. And we also believe that praying helps point us in the right direction as well. And it reminds us who we serve and where we come from.
Coming up next, I'll sit down with State Representative Donna Givens of Loxley about her legislation targeting human trafficking. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Olympian Jesse Owens dominated the 1936 Olympics with 4 track and field gold medals in the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, the long jump, and the 4x100-meter relay. The Lawrence County native dominated track and field from a young age. While in college at the Big Ten Championships, Owens set 3 world records and tied a 4th in less than 1 hour. Owens is widely remembered as the nation's greatest Olympian.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Donna Givens from Baldwin County. Representative, thanks for coming on Capital Journal.
Thank you for having me.
This is your first time on Capital Journal since being elected in 2022, is that correct?
It is.
Welcome to the show. I'm always thrilled to introduce new representatives. Of course, you're not new anymore. You've got a session under your belt, but for your first time. So could you kind of talk about your background, what got you interested in running for the legislature, and maybe your district a little bit, the profile of your district?
Okay. Grew up in Loxley, been in Baldwin County my entire life, and my career was at Baldwin EMC, the electric co-op. My last 21 years at Baldwin EMC, I did governmental affairs. So I was in and out of Montgomery, working with Gina Musfer first when she was the lobbyist for AREA, and then Sean Strickler. Mm-hmm. And I did more local in the later years, more local, always looking out for what was good for Baldwin EMC, the electric co-op, and what was not. So I was in and out of Montgomery, got my feet wet, just loved it. Loved being able to help people to make a difference and looking out for our constituents that were members of the co-op. So that's where I got started. And so I knew when I retired that I would want to run for office. House was always my forte because I spent more time with House members than I did with the Senate, although I had some great friends in the Senate. And so when Representative Harry Shiver was thinking about retiring, he contacted me and told me he would like to retire and he would love for me to run in his position. And so the journey began.
Yeah, that's quite a compliment coming from old Coach.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
He had quite the career up here. Well, tell us about your district. Like Baldwin County just seems to be growing like crazy. So that probably gives you, special issues to deal with.
It does, and Baldwin County is growing. It's one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And with that growth comes issues. So my district is, and it changed so much from what Representative Harry Shiver had. So it changed drastically in the redistricting. So where Stockton, where he lives, would no longer be in the district. So my district starts at the tip end of Coastal Community College and goes south, takes in Pine Grove, Stapleton, and then, of course, Loxley, Bell Forest, Silver Hill, Robertsdale, Summerdale, Foley, and Alberta. So it's the L down Highway 59 with a few pockets off, like with Pine Grove in the north area, and then Bell Forest.
Lots of small towns that are getting less small every day, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, like Loxley, for years, my whole life, it was a town. And now Loxley is a city. So much growth right there. And many of the other cities have had a major growth, but Loxley has certainly experienced growth in these later years.
We can tell every time we drive to the beach. Well, the reason I wanted to have you on tonight is you've got this bill having to do with human trafficking, and specifically, kind of based off the movie Sound of Freedom that has just been, spread like wildfire. Such a popular film. But you got a shout out, your bill and the issue got a shout out from Governor Ivey last night in her State of the State. It's pretty significant, support coming from the governor. Tell me about your bill, what it does, and how it came about.
Okay. For years, I've read books and listened to news and news articles, and human trafficking was always something that just touched my heart. It was like, how could you lose a child? How would you ever recover? And how would you live knowing the abuse that this child was receiving? Being sexual abuse or whatever, being in a labor camp or whatever they would be going through. And so that's always just been touched my heart. And in my prayers, I would pray for these children that had been abducted and for the parents. So I wanted to see the movie when it came out, and two of my grandchildren and I went to see it. We were not finished during session, and I was staying in Prattville, and these two grandchildren live in Prattville, so I called them and said, let's go to the movies. They were so excited. They're very active in their church and had been talking about this, and numerous had seen the movie. And so that night, after it was over, I told the two of them, I said, Mimi is going to do something to help the children in the state of Alabama. I can only focus on Alabama, can only work Alabama at this current time. So I had thought of the voice of freedom, just changing it from the movie. So I contacted LSA, and it began, LSA Legislative Service. And so they're always so willing to work with any of us and do a great job.
Very professional.
Yes, they are. And so that's how it came about. Well, when I pre-filed the bill, I was contacted by the first news outlet, and they wanted to know about it. And I said, it's really simple. You've caught in the state of Alabama trafficking someone 18 years old or under, it's a mandatory life sentence. And their question was, what is it now? And I said, it's a Class A felony, up to 20 years in jail. And of course, did you know this is the toughest response in the nation? I said, yes. It's a horrible crime. So it needs a tough, very tough sentence, I feel like, for someone doing this crime. So I'm very aware that this is the toughest in the nation, and I hope that other states will follow through. I mean, there's so many children that this is happening to, that everyone needs to take a strong stand against this.
And so the film, and I confess I haven't seen it, but it's about like a CIA or intelligence type of person down in South America that basically is told to give up and come back home, and kind of goes rogue on his own in order to find a victim of human trafficking. Am I getting it kind of close?
Absolutely, and funding was cut because he was told to come home, and he and his wife funded this mission themselves and continued to work, and my understanding continue to work today doing this.
Wow, okay. I do have to ask, I mean, life in prison, that is a huge penalty. And I wonder if there are any, Eighth Amendment concerns about, overreaching and having an Eighth Amendment concern in federal court if there was a lawsuit over this. Has that been brought up in your conversations with your colleagues or lawyers?
It has not, and I've talked to the Legal Association, I've talked to the DA Association, our local sheriff, Hall Smack in Baldwin County, I've talked with him, and I have full support, and of course full support from the governor and from the Speaker of the House, Nathaniel Ledbetter. So to me, when you have everyone like that behind you and supporting it and wanting to help you get the bill passed, no one has mentioned any ramifications from a federal standpoint.
Mm-hmm. What about your colleagues? I mean, every time we talk about sentencing here in the legislature, it becomes controversial pretty quick, right? Especially with Democrats will a lot of times object to any bill that has increased penalties for anything. Of course, nobody's for a crime like this, but penalties sometimes get some people a little nervous. Have you heard any feedback about that?
I have not. I have not, and I've tried to talk to everyone, as many as I possibly can, to make them aware of this bill. And everyone seems to be on board. Everyone seems to want to see this pass and want to do their part to help get it passed. Mm-hmm. And it'll take us all. It takes a team. There's the one that will sponsor the bill, but it takes the rest of us to get across the finish line. And I look forward to this being something that we work together, both sides of the aisle, just like we did before with my Baby in the Box bill.
Yeah, I was actually wanting to ask you about that while I have you. So last year you sponsored this Baby in a Box bill, essentially a way for parents, mothers who are in a situation where they have to give up their child, allowing an option, allowing a safe option for that, anonymous, not criminal option for that. It passed its law, and I understand it's been utilized.
It has. We have 2 boxes that have been installed. We're waiting on the rest. The first one was in Madison, and the second one was in Prattville. Now, the box in Madison was 12 days in use, open for use for 12 days, and they received the first baby. So, as sad as it sounds, I am excited about that because my thoughts were, where would this baby be?
It's a life saved.
Right,
probably.
If the box had not been in use. What would have happened to the baby? And also it saves a young mother's life, because if not, she would be charged with manslaughter and her life would be ruined. And her trying to live with herself from then on, you don't know at what state of the mind that they may do something like this. So it saves the baby's life. It allows for a couple that have been wanting to adopt, wanting a baby so badly. So I look at it as a 3-in-1. It saves the baby's life, it saves a young lady from making the mistake of her life, and then it gives a baby to some couple that is so eager to adopt.
You're right, it's tough to kind of contemplate, it's tough to really talk about, but ultimately it's compassion.
Exactly, because it's love on the mother's part for her to say, I can't do this. My baby would be better off in someone's arms that would love it, this would be their child, their baby, and raise it as their own. So to me, that's a mother that really does love the baby. Maybe she's not in the best circumstances, maybe mentally she can't care for the baby. I'm not judging by no means, but I see it as tough love. She's made a tough decision to do the right thing by the baby.
It's always interesting to see legislation actually become reality and out there in the real world. We're out of time, but thanks again for coming on Capitol Journal. We'll look to have you back more in the coming years, and we'll see you around the State House.
All right, thank you. I'm looking forward to that.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
Lowndes County native E.D. Nixon was a longtime leader of the civil rights movement in Alabama. He worked tirelessly to increase the number of registered black voters in Montgomery and was one of the key organizers of several civil rights organizations in the state. In 1945, he was elected as the president of the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP, just 2 years later becoming the state president of the organization. In 1955, Nixon and a group of Montgomery area clergy and civic leaders founded the Montgomery Improvement Association, or MIA. The MIA provided a focal point for activism in Montgomery's black community, and its leaders organized the Montgomery Bus Boycott, in which the city's black citizens refused to ride public transportation for an astounding 381 days. Long overdue recognition was finally bestowed on this early civil rights hero when the Montgomery County Public School System named an elementary school in his honor in 2001.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night at the same time with more Capital Journal right here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.